Hey there, it's Christian from 7 Gaming Network, and I'm here with another Star Wars Destiny Tactica, and this time we're going to take a look at a rogue hero character, and it's the beautiful Padme Amidala. Now, they've made this character with really quite a specific role in the game, really interestingly, and I think kind of fits a theme very well too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the dice sides as I always do in these videos, and we'll also take a look at the ability, points, value, health, what is that role for this character specifically, and what kind of decks can we see Padme in, and maybe some cards that work well with her, or some tricks and tips. So let's have a look at this then. So first of all, the dice itself. So the first result that we can get on there, we've got a 2 focus, straight up, no messing around. Straight away, this means that we've got a character that can enable other characters. 2 focus is a really big result. I mean, this is a kind of ability that is not necessarily that you can actually build around it, but it's so strong that it can super impact the other characters that you're playing with, upgrade dice that you choose to put into play. 2 focus is a really strong result. I'd go as far as to say that it really is one of the best results that you can get on a dice in the game. There aren't many other 2 focus results in the game. We've got one on Akbar. You can get one in through the one with the Force, which is a 4 cost upgrade to put into play. So there aren't many, but almost always when they turn up, they're going to impact. So this is a really good strong start to the dice. And remember, what it means is that it causes her to be an enabling character. She can cause your other dice to turn to whatever you want them to. So it's really powerful. Now the next side is the 1 discard, and this is okay. I guess the thing I like about a 1 discard is that it's not really the result that you want to be getting from Padme. You know, that's highly unlikely that that's why she's in your deck, because a 1 discard by itself isn't normally very strong. But because it's not the main result that you want, probably the only time you're going to resolve it is right at the end of the turn. You've used up all your options to try and get her to the sides that you really do want, and you're kind of left with that 1 discard. Now, in my experience in Destiny, what tends to happen is your opponent will often hold back a good card. You know, it's or a very specific card that they know they want to use against you. It might be like something like a dodge, or it may be the end of a turn when they've put a Sith holocron back into the hand, or there's a number of reasons why that last card in hand, or maybe 1 or 2 last cards in your opponent's hand, could be really good cards that they really want to keep hold of. And the only time you're probably going to resolve this discard is right at the end of the turn, and it's going to hit one of those cards. So again, it's not terrible because of the situation that you'll probably end up playing that discard face in. Then we see she's got a resource. Fine, most characters in the Awakenings do. In fact, I think all character cards have a resource face in the Awakening set. And it's fine as well because it also helps with Padme's special. And Padme's special is, I'm going to read it out, so it's her ability: discard the top card of an opponent's deck, or spend 1 resource to discard the top 2 cards of an opponent's deck. Okay, and she's got 2 of those specials on her dice. That's strong. Like we're going to see that a third of the time that we're rolling her dice, and she's got her 1 blank side. And what's really interesting as well is there aren't many characters that have a special ability. There's not many characters with a special result. So it's interesting. Now we see that she's got the ability to discard 1 if you roll that result, but if you can spend the resource, then you can discard 2 cards. So looking at this ability then, clearly it's making her a more of a control type character, specifically with trying to mill your opponent out. Remember, in Destiny you can win when your opponent runs out of cards in both deck and hand. So whilst the focus enables a combat character or combat characters that she may be placed with, this ability, which is going to turn up on a third of the time you're rolling her dice, is this mill. Now, so let's assess it. Is that ability going off for one card any good? It's not great, I would say. Largely because a single card, you may get lucky and you may hit an important card in your opponent's deck. But actually, if you're playing against someone who has built a decent deck, often it kind of feels like every card that you potentially lose is a good card. And of course, every card is also a chance to re-roll. So it's okay, but it isn't. It's not massive just discarding the one. However, discarding two cards, well, obviously that's double the impact. That's quite a bit more significant. And if you're playing the 2 dice version, so 14 points that you spent on Padme, which isn't a super amount, you could be potentially discarding 4 cards if you've got 2 resources to spend on those 2 specials. Now, thinking through the numbers, crunching the numbers on this ability, if we are able to discard 4 cards in a turn, if we're able to mill, 4 cards in a turn, and they've already drawn 5, then on probably on average, your opponent might on average keep 1 card back at the end of a turn, would be fairly typical. You're probably looking at an opponent getting through 8, and if they're using up all their cards, maybe even then 9 cards in a turn. We have a 30 card deck in Destiny. If they are getting through 9 cards by the 4th turn, or even if 8, or even 7 is going to put them very, very close to it's all over in 4 turns. So in 4 rounds of play. So Padme puts a real good clock on you if you can get her results, or if your opponent, if you're playing against her, can get those specials happening and can spend the resources. Now, they're fairly big ifs if they can get those specials, if they can spend those resources. But there's no doubt about it, the ability is strong if you're able to get to that magical 4 card mill a turn. So immediately cards sort of spring to mind that you are probably going to want to use with Padme to get the most out of her. Data pad. So data pad is going to double up for giving you the resources that you want, because you've got to pay for these specials to get the full value of the 2s. And of course it also means that you can use the data pad special to turn Padme's dice to specials, and they're all going to be resolving at once, so that's good action economy. So data pad is an absolutely essential card really with her. And then what we tend to see is that people will either they'll tend to split then with who goes with Padme, and you can kind of go the blue characters route, or you can go the red characters route. Now if you go the blue characters route, like a hero mill type deck as they have been being called, well, that does give you access to a very important card like Patience, which really helps with your mill strategy, although it is expensive. And then you've also got cards like Use the Force to be trying to get Padme's special results to be going off. And you also tend to get more focus, of course, when you're using blue and you've got blue characters in play. Now, if you go the red route, the most common way that I've seen this being used is to go with Padme and 2 troopers, 2 rebel troopers. And this actually seems like it's quite a successful deck. It's pretty strong. I think most people would regard it as sort of tier 2, i.e. it's a good deck. It's not tier 1, it's not absolutely super powerful, but it's going to consistently win a good number of games, and is absolutely capable of, with a capable player, of winning a tournament. And of course what the Rebel Trooper version brings is it brings the Guardian ability, which helps to keep Padme alive, which is definitely something to think about, because clearly your opponent's going to be trying to focus on getting rid of her, because that mill is a big clock on the game if you can get those results, and she's only got 10 health. So helping with the Guardian and trying to get rid of those damage results, but also sort of battlefield control, which obviously helps them with your initiative, and you can be also playing cards like Dug In, things like that, which can really help to just control, stay alive, and just ensure that mill effect happening every turn. And of course shields, and also there's of course some lots of healing, lots of potential to get rid of damage and to mitigate that damage as it's coming in, or even after it's landed. Things like field medic. So there's quite a few different builds, I think, that you can use Padme in, and of course that's going to massively increase as we get more new characters, and that's partly because in terms of points value she's quite cheap. A 10 and a 14. I mean, I've even seen a deck with Padme and Luke, where I think it's probably more of a fun deck. I've heard it termed the Take Your Mother to Work Day deck or something like that, where really that's taking advantage of the two focus that we see on Padme, and going with yellow cards available then to the sort of deck build that might more typically be a Luke Akbar deck, and go sort of blue-red. And of course if you go that route and you're using Padme with Luke, well then you can include cards like Second Chance, which means that Luke just becomes so very difficult to kill when you've got access to cards like that. So some interesting options in terms of that, but I think that would be strictly regarded as a tier 3 type kind of deck. So in terms of some other things that are good cards to include or to think about with Padme, clearly we've got to keep her alive, so Second Chance is a very helpful card. Diplomatic Immunity is a card that we see frequently used with Padme, and it's expensive, and that's probably the biggest drawback, because I think with a Padme deck you're going to be quite jealous over your resources and how you're using them and spending them, because you need to make sure that you are able to have those 2 resources available for your 2 special sides, which is kind of what everything in the deck is trying to work towards happening every turn. Diplomatic Immunity, whilst it's expensive, is a lot of shields. I mean, it really is a lot of shields that you can put out across your characters. So it is a good include if you can work out some way of supporting it with the resources. But ultimately, Padme she's still squishy. She's only got the 10 health. And if you spent 14 points on her, that's a little scary, and you definitely need to be making sure that you're doing everything you can to protect her and to keep her alive. I think ultimately this deck with Padme is vulnerable. If you've got decks that can come out really strong and do lots of damage early on, it can be really difficult to keep Padme alive. And I think really the only chance you're going to have with Padme with a mill type strategy against decks that can pump out a lot of damage first and second turn, I'm thinking decks like Django Veers, and maybe even upcoming characters. We've already had Emperor Palpatine spoiled. He can do up to 10 damage in the first round. Potentially, that's a dead Padme unless you can get some shields on her. So I think unless you manage to draw your defensive type cards early, or your opponent with their big damage deck doesn't actually draw maybe any upgrades in their starting hand, their mulligan doesn't work out, and then perhaps you were really fortunate and you managed to start milling their upgrades. You're milling their holdout blasters and their cards that they're trying to use to get extra damage onto their characters, and that is one thing that can happen with mill, of course, and it can be really demoralising when you're just milling away all of your great cards and all of those cards that you know you need on there to do the damage against the mill deck. But I think that's one of the points where a mill deck can be strong, and of course in the Awakening set, I think Padme is your main milling character, main mill deck mechanic that we've seen so far. So, all things told, a really interesting character. I really like it when they have characters that are quite specific in what they want them to achieve and to do, and what their sort of role will be on the battlefield. And that's certainly what we see in Padme, and is something that, Fantasy Flight Games have strongly hinted that that's what they want to do with this game as it progresses and grows. That they want to have more and more characters who are really quite specialised in their battlefield role, or the strategy that they bring to a team if you include them. And Padme's role very clearly is mill out your opponent. So that's Padme. If you think I've missed anything out, anything important, then please do add it onto the comments. And if you want to get in touch with me, then you can always contact me through the Knights of Ren Discord channel. My online name is Peace Lord, and I'd love to hear from you, especially if you've got any things like requests or anything like that that you'd like me to do on certain cards that you don't see here in the Tactica's list. Anyway, so until next time, keep enjoying Destiny.